Usually, when I go out to eat somewhere, anywhere, I leave a pretty generous tip, even if the server is undeserving of the cash. It's not necessarily because I'm a good guy or anything, but my sister was a server and so was my mother, and I understand that it's the tips, not the server minimum wage, that pays the bills. It was the night of New Year's Eve. I was in my late 20s at the time with a little girl and wife, so I wasn't into the alcohol scene, which meant bars were automatically out of the question. We went to a local diner that served a variety of pancakes all day long. They were pretty well known in the area and were typically busy, but with it being New Year's Eve, combined with the fact that they didn't serve alcohol, the place was almost completely deserted. We were greeted by a short but rather round server. Her apron was filthy, and her red shirt had old grease stains plastered down the front, on top of the fact that she smelled like cat piss. Instant appetite killer. The girl herself wasn't overly nice either. She forgot our drinks twice. We ordered waters and my daughter a chocolate milk, and brought out the wrong orders. How she managed to do this is beyond me, because there were only 2 other tables in the place, and both had already received their food when we walked in. On top of that, this waitress was flirting unmercilessly with me. When I handed her our menus, she slid her hand from my wrist to my menu, smiling and winking at me. All this in front of my wife and daughter. It was creepy. The food, when we got it, was fine, but the waitress, her attitude was just completely disgusting. The last straw was when my daughter was running back to our table after using the restroom, and she told my 4-year-old daughter that naughty children would not be allowed back. My daughter apologized for running, but then the waitress patted her on the head and said, "Don't worry, Mommy's not mad," before attempting to pick her up. My wife got up and grabbed my daughter before she could do this. Now, this is also a place that adds the tip onto the check if the meal is over a certain price. When she dropped off the check, I asked her if she included the tip, and she said she did. That's when I asked her for the manager. When she asked why I wanted him, I told her it was so that he could remove the tip. I also told her that she wouldn't be receiving one. She stared at me for a moment, like she wanted to say something but thought better of it. She snatched the check from my wife's hand and got to the manager. I told him how she had been behaving all day and that I would not be tipping her. He offered to comp our meals, but I paid anyway, as I didn't think a local family-owned business should suffer because of her attitude. The manager apologized again and sent the server back to our table to cash us out. I handed her the receipt and my card, signed, and abruptly left without leaving the tip. And as we left, I could see the waitress through the window, and she was staring at me. But it was an odd stare. The first time, when she snatched the check out of my wife's hand, she was glaring, but this time she had a smirk plastered across her face. Not a regular smirk either. This one was wide-eyed and intense, almost like a lioness hidden in the grass watching her prey. She wasn't moving. She just stared, watching as we pulled out of the parking lot. I don't think I even saw her blink. But I let the incident leave my mind and decided to enjoy my New Year's with my family. However, my New Year's celebration was short-lived because 3 days later, my wife burst into our garage where I was working on my truck, accusing me of cheating on her and being an overall dog. I had no idea what she was talking about. And that's when she explained. My wife had received a phone call from the credit card company. Her card had been used, and at the most random places. A few hundred were spent at a grocery store, but the rest of the list didn't match. Strip clubs, bars, casinos, restaurants. Altogether, my wife's card had an extra $4,000 spent on it in the last few days. I told her that it wasn't me, and that I had no idea where those charges came from. I called the credit card company back and demanded they list out the charges again. I told them I hadn't used the card since we went to the local family eatery down the street with a smelly server. Coincidentally, that's when all the charges began. Then it hit me. I remembered back to when we were leaving and the crazy smile the server had on her face. I looked in my wallet to check my cards, and sure enough, I still had my wife's card in my wallet. She and I have a card from the same bank and have a copy of each other's just in case the other card stops working on something. I had accidentally used the wrong card, and my wife has a very feminine name, so if the waitress had used it, no one would have batted an eye or questioned her. But I still have the card, so how was she able to use it in public places? The representative on the phone explained that most credit cards these days have the number copied and printed on a new card so the victim doesn't even know. Had it been used online, the safeguard would have been tripped faster, and a lot of thieves have caught on to that, so using the real card draws much less suspicion. He suspected that was the case for us. The credit card company also hadn't blocked the card due to the holiday, and most people tend to spend a larger amount of money this time of year, especially on credit cards. Plus, the card was spent within the same zip code. Needless to say, we immediately canceled both our cards and opened an investigation. We called the restaurant and let them know what the server had done, but she wasn't there anymore. The manager had apparently fired the girl the same day we left for her behavior. She had a history of treating other customers the way she treated us, and had lasted there for about 3 weeks. It took a few weeks, but eventually the charges were dropped off our credit card. However, I don't know if this girl was ever caught, but I share this to warn you. We live in a very small town where everyone is extremely friendly, and for something like this to happen, it was literally a shock. Watch yourselves. You never know when you'll be the target. For some context, I'm currently a 24-year-old blonde girl that just finished college and moved back to my hometown. I also happen to be one of the unfortunate folks whose birthday falls on or near a holiday. My birthday just happened to be January 1st, New Year's Day, and in this story, I was turning 21. I was the youngest of all my friends, so it was my first time at a bar while they were already frequent patrons. I hadn't replaced my ID yet, but the bouncer at the club was nice enough to let me in so long as I didn't drink until the ball dropped. I politely agreed and went in with my friends. As we walked past him, he yelled that he'd be keeping an eye on me. New Year's Eve wasn't that bad except for this one group of guys. They looked to be slightly older than us, but still young enough to be interesting. They hovered around my group for a bit, talking to my friends and attempting to talk to me. My friends were drunk and participated, but not me. I wasn't comfortable with these 3 guys grabbing at me and my friends, trying to get our attention. And with alcohol in the mix, well, I simply just wasn't going for it. My friends got drunk, while I remained sober, keeping to my promise I made the bouncer. The bouncer was watching me after the doors closed at 11:30, so even though we were being followed by those guys, I felt comfortable knowing the bouncer was watching. There was 1 minute left, and the countdown began. My friend Nikki went to the bar to grab me a shot. She handed the drink to me with only seconds to spare, and the entire bar counted out loud. 3, 2, 1. It was New Year's and my birthday. I took the shot as soon as the ball dropped, and then another shot, and another. If ever there was a lesson I learned that night about alcohol, it's to not drink with professionals where you're still taking baby steps. I'd only taken 6 shots of whatever the hell it was Nikki had given me before I began feeling sick. I had never drank before, and my vision was getting blurry. Nikki and our other friend Kennedy helped me to the bathroom so I could vomit. We were in the stall for a bit, waiting for my nausea to subside when we heard the door open. We figured it was another girl as the bar was filled with them. It was one of those women getting free, guys paid $10 type of nights. But it wasn't a girl. Hell, it wasn't a group of girls. It was the guys that had been following my group around for the entire night. What the fuck? I know I was intoxicated, but I wasn't blackout drunk, and I knew immediately that they weren't to be in there. Kennedy was the first to react. She demanded the guys get out of the girls' bathroom. Nikki joined her in the yelling of obscenities while she still held back my hair. The guys didn't listen. One grabbed Kennedy by her waist and ran his other hand sloppily through her red locks. Nikki stood up and was immediately grabbed by two other guys who picked her up and laid her on the sink. I stayed in the stall. The men, they didn't notice me yet. I was terrified. I could hear Kennedy demanding for one of the men to get off of her, while Nikki just yelled. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't see straight, let alone walk straight, and I didn't know where my phone was. The music was blaring through the door, so it's not like anyone could hear us. But I knew I couldn't wuss out. My friends were in trouble, and eventually they would find me too. So I tried to stand up and use the toilet for balance, but like the klutz that I am, I slipped and slammed into the side of the stall, giving myself away. One of the guys had Nikki looked into the stall and found me. I kicked off my heels at him, trying to get him away, but it didn't work. I clutched the neck of the toilet as he grabbed me by my ankles, screaming, telling him to let me go. I didn't know what these guys wanted, and I didn't want to find out. I continued to kick the guy in his face, something that I knew was painful since I had been playing soccer for over 13 years. He caught my legs and pinned them down, slowly climbing up my body. I tried to get up, but his masculine weight pushed me back down. I continued yelling. What I was yelling, I don't remember, but I'm not someone who is just gonna lay there and take it. He tried putting his hand over my mouth. It smelled horrifically of alcohol and sweat, but I bit him anyway. Hard. He pulled back, but grabbed me by my hair, yanking me out of the toilet stall. I scratched and clawed at him, trying to get him to let me go. Then I hear grunting. The guy who had me by my hair stopped and dropped me. I heard another grunt and some yelling, but it wasn't coming from me, or Nikki, or Kennedy. I heard another male voice. He was yelling, "What are you doing?" and "Get out of here." The guys left, and suddenly the bathroom was quiet. All I could hear was Nikki and Kennedy panting, especially Nikki. I looked up at her, and she was shaking and just staring at the ceiling, still laying on the counter. I looked around and made sure we also had our clothes on. We did, minus my heels anyway. Then the door swung open again. I stood up, ready to defend myself again, but I could hear, for a brief moment, that the door was open, that everyone outside was being ushered out of the bar, and that they were closing. It hadn't been too long since the ball dropped, and bars usually stay open until 3 a.m. around here, even though they stopped serving alcohol around 2. The door shut, and I could see, standing in front of us, was the bouncer. He had another guy behind him. I'm assuming another bouncer, and he asked if we were okay. He helped Nikki off the sink while Kennedy dusted herself off. Apparently, when the bouncer said he'd be watching me, he meant all night, not just until the ball dropped and I officially turned 21. I was grateful, and after the bar cleared, I made sure to thank him for that. He got us waters and offered to call the police, but we didn't want him to. Nikki just wanted to go home, and I didn't want my parents knowing since I still lived with my aunt instead of on campus with Nikki and Kennedy. He called us a cab and followed it to Nikki and Kennedy's dorm room just to make us feel comfortable getting back. None of us were touched inappropriately. Kennedy, the only one who could see everything, said they were looking for our purses, which were in the stall with me. It was an attempted robbery that got foiled by a very attentive bouncer. Our stuff wasn't stolen, but it very well could have been. Who knows what else they wanted instead of our stuff. I'm just glad that bouncer was there and that he was truly watching me all night long. I live in a pretty large city that has several abandoned buildings. The city itself is fine, but there's a portion of it, one that the local residents refer to as District 12 after the Hunger Games book, that's just completely falling apart. It's a place where the local college students go to get drunk, as the police rarely frequent those streets. The buildings are falling apart, and many of the houses that had started being built just were never finished. Why, I don't know, but it's just how it is. Anyway, on New Year's Eve, my friend, who I'll call Jack, invited me to a party over in District 12. Jack is in college, but I'm not, as I chose to take on a technical career. But he still got me into the best parties. Jack texted me the address where the party was supposed to be. I offered to pick him up, but he declined, citing he already had a ride. This should have been my first red flag. Jack and I had gone to several parties together over his first 2 years of college, and we always went together. We knew each other from high school and trusted one another more than anyone at the time. I thought it was weird, but shrugged it off. He was, after all, a college guy now, and it's possible that he made new friends. I told him I'd meet him there. He asked that I bring a case of beer with me so he and his freshman and sophomore underage friends could get wasted. I texted him back and told him I would, even though personally, I don't like bringing alcohol, and Jack knows this. I'm 6 months older than he is and had already turned 21, whereas he hadn't. I wasn't keen on the idea of underage drinking, but stopped at a local gas station to pick up a case of beer. Stupid, I know, but I brought it anyway. I pulled up to the address and got out of my car. My second red flag was when I noticed that no one was there. I looked around and walked around the house. I checked my phone. The GPS was correct, and it was 11 o'clock, the same time I told Jack I'd meet him. I continued looking around the place, but saw no one. Just when I was about to call Jack, I received a text. It was him. He instructed me to go around back behind the building. This is when I really got suspicious. I mean, this is New Year's Eve. Other than Halloween and St. Patrick's Day, this was the one occasion when people our age went nuts for parties. So even if everyone was around back, I should still at least hear music or see cars out front. But it was Jack after all, and I didn't think he'd lie. But I knew something was off. I put my phone in my pocket and proceeded around back. I could hear a crackling fire, and behind the building, saw a line of about 9 guys, standing in height from shortest to tallest. Jack, being about 5'11", was third from the tallest. There was also a group of guys standing around them, all relaxing and drinking beers. When I walked closer, one guy pointed his empty beer bottle at me. "6, is this your spud?" I frowned, ready to cuss the guy out for referring to me as a spud, but then Jack answered, "Yes, Brother Allen, sir." I looked around and walked up to him. "Jack, what's going on? What is this?" The guy who had his beer bottle pointed at me stepped between myself and Jack. "Don't approach the animals, buddy." I stared at him for a moment until he spoke again. "Have a seat." Suddenly, 2 of the other guys had me by my shoulders and forced me backwards. I didn't notice when I walked in, but there was a row of 9 chairs lined up against the back of the building. I had dropped the case of beer on the ground. I looked up and down the row of chairs and noticed they were filled with someone. I started piecing things together. 9 guys standing in a line, a bonfire. How Jack addressed the prick who pointed his beer bottle at me. This was a hazing set. Jack was a pledge for a fraternity. I looked at the other people sitting in the seats, and they were just as mortified as I was. The girl to my left looked like she was entirely too young to be there in the first place, and the guy to my right, well, he just looked like he didn't belong. The prick with the bottle then spoke. He welcomed us to the final ceremony and hoped that we would enjoy the show. I looked at the girl and then at Jack. There were maybe about 15 or 20 other guys standing around Jack in the campfire. He spoke again. He told the guys that Jack was standing with that at midnight they'd officially be a part of the fraternity. The next hour was difficult to watch, to say the least.
The first 10 or 15 minutes with them reciting some speeches or something, one about excuses and another about determination. Then they started saluting every guy around there with a signature performance. But what was really hard to watch was their induction. They began giving the line of guys orders. One guy was told to run around the back neighing like a unicorn. Another was instructed to sing "I'm a dumbass, I'm so dumb" to the tune of "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" as loud as he possibly could. The shortest guy, who they referred to as Ace, had to do 15 push-ups every time someone else in the line didn't do what they were told correctly. Jack's particular order was to respond to everything he was asked with a phrase so vulgar, I don't even want to say it, but let's just say it involves something very graphic that he'd do to himself. Another guy was instructed to run around like a retarded velociraptor, an instruction I really hated considering I have a little sister who has severe autism. As midnight approached, the guys began pelting the line of guys with snowballs. The abuse got worse as it turned physical, beyond the snowballs. The guy with the beer bottle walked up to another guy next to Jack and asked him if he thought he could make his heart stop. He yelled, "No, Brother Allen, sir, no." And each time, that Allen guy, he punched him as hard as he could in his chest every time he asked the question. And every time the guy answered, "No, Brother Allen, sir, no." And this Allen dude was built, like goes to the gym twice a day and drinks kegs of protein shakes for the fun of it. Built. And each time he hit this kid, the kid almost fell over. And every time he fell over, it was another 15 push-ups for Ace. I just couldn't take it anymore, but before I could say anything, the girl sitting next to me stood up and proclaimed that she wasn't going to watch this. Just as she was about to leave, that Allen guy told everyone to stop. He told her that if she left, her person, the one who invited her, would be dropped. She said she didn't care, and then he told her that if she left, he'd leak the video. She stopped and asked what video. Allen responded, "Let's just say, I know what you and number 5 were doing last night, all night long. Now sit your ass down." She stopped and put her hand over her mouth. As she took her seat, he instructed Ace to do another 15 push-ups. I thought I could leave, but then I realized they all had something on all of us. I remembered back to the text Jack had sent me, that oddly specific text, "Can you bring beer so my freshman friends and sophomore friends can get wasted?" Even if he hadn't mentioned them, Jack was underage, and the fact that I agreed to bring alcohol for him to drink, and it was in a text, I just screwed myself. That's why he wanted the beer. I looked at everyone sitting down and could see we all realized the same thing at the same time. We were blackmailed into watching a hazing ceremony. I looked at my phone. 11:43. We endured another 17 long minutes of this. Allen held his phone up, and we could hear the New Year's Eve countdown. 3, 2, 1. Happy fucking New Year. All the guys began clapping and congratulating the line on quote-unquote crossing. They had opened the pack of beer I brought and poured it over the pledges, I guess as some sort of congratulations. While the pledges were celebrating and shaking hands with their new frat brothers, I tapped Allen on the shoulder. "Can we go?" I asked sternly. Allen smirked, looked me up and down, and then behind me at everyone else. "Sure. You can go. Spud." I looked at Jack. He looked at me briefly and then turned his back to talk to the rest of the frat guys. I hadn't talked to Jack since. I'm assuming he did it because it was part of the ceremony, and had he not done what was asked, had he not blackmailed me to get me to go, he would not have crossed. But still, I can't get that night out of my mind. For Jack to blackmail me for something so stupid and illegal. I guess it's a good thing I didn't go to college.